Good morning, Farmington High School. This is your weatherman. I went from flight agent to weatherman to keep going. You can do this. This is the last notes video. Unit 4 is usually the most hard, but we're actually kind of tying it together today. What I mean by that is now we're solving trinomial equations. Before we've been factoring them, we've been doing things with them, manipulating GCF. Now we're solving them. Now, all this goes to what you can do with solving trinomial equations. So trinomial equations have a possibility of two solutions. So you always had this ax squared plus bx plus c. And this 2, that 2 here, is what told us that we could solve it. Okay? There's always two possible solutions. To find the solution, set the equation equal to 0. This is really all you're going to see now is we're going to put equals 0 on them, and that means you got to solve them completely. So some of them you're going to have to factor and then solve completely by setting it equal to 0. So if it's to the third term, there's probably 3 solutions. But right now we're just going to worry about 2. So let's look at this. We had this big GCF. Then we factored and we got these 2 solutions. So if there's 2 possible solutions, what you do is you break these into 2. You write x plus 6 equals 0. Subtract 6 from each side. And now you have x equals negative 6. Or you have x minus 4 equals 0. You add 4. And you have x equals 4. So the zero product property is the definition of doing this equals 0, but all we're going to do is be able to solve word problems and get things like 4 and negative 6. Looking at 2, alright, 2 is going to be the same thing. It's going to have 2 cases, 2x plus 8 and 3x plus 2. Now they both can equal 0. Basically what this idea boils down to is if you have a times b equals 0, one of 2 things has to happen. Either it's 0 times b equals 0, or a times 0, which equals 0. So when it says possible solutions, either a is equal to 0, which I did there, or b is equal to 0, which I did in the second one. So one of those 2 has to equal 0. So that's why we split both into 0. Then we solve it. Subtract 8, subtract 8. 2x equals negative 8. Well, I'm going to divide by 2 and get x equals negative 4. Alright, then I'm going to subtract 2 up here. Subtract 2. Alright, you're going to have 3x equals negative 2. Divide by 3, divide by 3. X equals negative 2/3. So, each one of these is going to have 2 possible solutions, and we're just going to keep finding them. So, if I try to make this more difficult on you, go away, Adobe, we're going to have things like y. If I guess and checked, 20 is pretty easy. I would get 5 and 4. Okay, so I'm not too worried about that yet. Alright. So 5 and 4. So I would say it has to be plus 5 and y minus 4 equal to 0. Make sure if I ever do anything wrong in the notes, just tell me. I'll fix it next time. So then I'd have y plus 5 equals 0 and y minus 4 equals 0. I'd add 4 here and get y equals 4. I could subtract 5, y equals negative 5. So, if it says solve the equation, you're now responsible for knowing how to get us values of y. So I could say 2 possible solutions here, negative 5 and 4. So then when I go to 4, I have 6 and negative 6, and 3 and 2. If I did this quick, it's negative 36 and 5. So it's got to be a positive 9 and a negative 4. So then I'd have 6a minus 4. 6a squared minus 4a plus 9a minus 6 divide by 2a, divide by 2a, divide by 3, divide by 3. Group those together. 2a equals. Whew, this is more fun than I wanted it to be. So sometimes you could guess and check. I chose to do my math here so that I had the correct answer no matter what. So I'm going to get 3, so plus 3, and I'm going to have 3a minus 2. So my middles do work, so I'm going to have 2a plus 3, and that's going to have to equal 0, and 3a minus 2 will have to equal 0. So then I'm going to have minus 3, 0, 2a equals negative 3, divide by 2. So a can equal negative a third, add 2, add 2, 3a equals 2/3. So I would say negative 3/2 or a positive 2/3. So that's a lot of writing. Those are long when you get to that. But you need to be able to do that. Alright, when you go to physics, those are things that you might have to be able to do. 5. Okay. All these other ones in 1, 2, 3, and 4, all of them were set equal to 0. So when you get to a problem where this number is here, subtract 35, because I know 35 like that makes it equal to 0. So it always has to equal 0 here, on the right. You can't solve it unless it equals 0. Then I would see this, and I would say it's minus 7 and x plus 5. So I'm guessing checking in my head, so I might do these wrong. X minus 7 equals 0, so add 7, x equals 7. Alright, subtract 5, x equals negative 5. So my two possible solutions are x equals 7 and x equals negative 5, and they don't work every time. This is a special case one. We just did this. Alright, so I'm going to square root these. And I'm going to have 2m plus 3 and 2m plus 3. So it always says there's two possible solutions. Well, really, the only solution here is going to be the same one twice. So 2m equals negative 3. Well, I divide by 2, and negative 3/2 is going to be my possible solution twice there. So I only have to write it one time, because they both are going to equal the same thing. So that's a good one. I like those special case ones. Here's another special case one. Square root. So 4x minus 5. But then now I'm going to have 4x plus 5. So these are not going to be the same thing. I'm going to have two possibilities. Well, basically what happens is the first one is going to be positive, because I add the 5. So 4x equals 5. Well, divide by 4, x equals 5/4. And then when I go to the other one, I have 4x plus 5. Well, what happens? I have to just subtract the 5, and then I'm going to have its opposite. I'm going to have x equals negative 5/4. So you can see the special cases. In this one, in number 6, you had the same answer twice. In number 7, you have the same answer, just the opposite side of the equals. You have the negative 5/4 and the positive 4/5. This one, I would actually divide that by 2. If I divide everything by 2, I get the same answer. So 3x squared minus 7x minus 6 equals 0. It's going to be negative 18. Comma negative 7, so negative 9 and 2, 3x squared minus 9x minus plus, this is going to be plus 2x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, so this is going to be 3x, divide by 3x, divide by 3x, divide by 2, divide by 2. So 3x times x minus 3 plus 2 times x minus 3. Just trust me on it. So 3x plus 2, x minus 3 equals 0. 3x is going to have to equal negative 2 when I subtract it to both sides. So x equals negative 2/3. Then when I add 3 to both sides, x is going to have to equal 3. So negative 2/3 and 3 is my answer for number 8. So that GCF really doesn't change the problem at all. It's still going to result in the same thing. You just have to pay attention to it. What do we got? Excuse me. Here's what I wanted to get to. A flare is launched from a life raft. The height of the flare in feet above the sea is modeled by the formula h equals 100t minus 16t squared, where t is time in seconds that the flare is launched. So let h equals 0 and solve 0 equals 100 for t. How many seconds will it take the flare to return to sea? So what happens here is this fantastic little thing where 0 is equal to 100t minus 16t squared. Well, the best way to solve this is if 0 equals 100t minus 16t squared, I actually have one answer already, because I could take out a 4t. 4t, 4t. Okay, I'd have 4t. These cancel out. 25 minus 4t. So then my possibilities here are going to be 0 equals 4t, so divide by 4, 0 equals t. So when time is 0, or when the flare starts at the ground or at the life craft, it starts at 0 before it leaves, and then if 25 minus 4t equals 0, then I could add 4t, 25 equals 4t, and this is equal to 6.25 seconds. Will be when the flare returns. So notice in my nice little sentence here that you can probably hardly read, I wrote returns in 6.25 seconds. One answer tells us when it started at the lifeboat, life raft, okay? So I know when it started there, it's at t equals 0. And then after it was shot, it went up in the air, and then it landed 6.25 seconds back in the sea, okay? So my sentence says after 6.25 seconds, it will return. So using the vocabulary is important. When did it start? At t equals 0. So little word problems, all right, our favorite this year, are still involved here, and you're still able to set things equal to 0. H is height. So H was height at the sea, and then when it returned. So you found the height at 0 twice. All right, the length of a rugby league field is 52 meters longer than it is wide. Write an expression for the area of the field. If the area of the field is 8,160 square meters, what are the dimensions of the field? So it wants area. So I'm going to tell you area equals length times width. I think we've been over this a few times. The length, L, that's my L, is still equals 52 meters longer, so plus 52, then W. So I would say L equals W plus 52. Well, then I'm going to go here and write W times W plus 52. Well, I also need to know that the area of the field is 8160. So area is 8160. I'll distribute this, W plus W squared plus 52W. So then I'll subtract this 8,160. And I'll have 0 equals W squared plus 52W minus 8160. Okay, I don't see a GCF there. So what I'm looking for are things that multiply together to be 8,160. 8 plus 1, 6, 300. So if I tried 30, 30 goes into 8,160. Well, for all you people with a brain. So, let's look at this. I'm grabbing a calculator. I forgot to do this problem ahead of time. Ooh, I'm close. 30 times 2,720 is that 8160 divided by 60. So 60 times 136. So 136, and there's no more threes. How about 120? 8160 divided by 120. 68. So 68 times 120. We have a winner. 68 and 120 are 52 apart. So what I have here is 0 equals W. I would say the 120 needs to be bigger since this is a plus, so I'll say plus 120 and W minus 68. Now, I extended the page so that we could see W, the width, is going to have to, the width plus 120 could be 0, or the width minus 68 equals 0. So we could add 68, the width could equal 68, or we could subtract 120, or the width could equal a negative 120. So as far as answer goes, that's a terrible answer, alright? Because if we scroll up, did we want the width to be a negative 120 degrees? No. What we wanted was the answer that we got, which was, I'm going to erase this right here. Alright, this is my guess and check here. Alright, we got the W to be negative 120, or W equals 68. Well, what I think is negative 120 is a distance. I don't drive 120 miles home from McDonald's. Distance is always positive. We'll double check that in geometry. So this is the only possible answer that makes sense. So then the length is going to be the positive 120. So if you write down on a quiz or test or your practice worksheet, if you tell me the flare in the lifeboat problem will travel at negative 2 seconds, you're going to get that wrong. Or if you tell me the distance from my house to Mr. Pickens is negative 3 miles, you're going to get that wrong. So you got to make sure you're picking the positive values. When it's numbers, or when we're talking about just two numbers, they can be negative. But when we're talking about real life applications, we can't have a negative time or negative distance and things like that. So, pep rally. Small footballs are launched by cheerleaders using a slingshot. How long is the football in the air before it touches the ground? So, hint, height equals 0 when the ball reaches the ground. Height is one of those things where when it hits the ground, it's 0. When the height is at 20, that's how you find out when things are 20, feet in the air and things like that. So every time it says hint, H is 0 when the ball reaches the ground, plug in 0 for H. So when 0 equals negative 16t plus 20t plus 6, first thing I always do in this problem is divide everything by 2, because that's just in the way and we don't need it. Negative 8t plus 10t plus 3. I would come over here. 3 and negative 8 are negative 24. 10, 12. 12 and negative 2. So I'd probably go with 0, and I'd probably put the negative 2 first. Negative 8t squared minus 2t plus 12t plus 3. Group these together because nobody forgot this stuff. I'm going to do negative 2t, and then here I'm going to do 3 because I don't want that first one to be negative. So I'll have 0 equals negative 2t negative 8 divided by negative 2 is a positive 4t, and this is going to be plus 1 plus 3 and 4t plus 1. Sweet. I'm going to go up here now. So 0 has to equal negative 2t plus 3 or 4t plus 1. Well, with 0 equals negative 2t plus 3, I'll add 2t, because when I add 2t, now I have a positive answer. I'm going to have 2t equals 3, divide by 2, divide by 2, t equals 3 halves. Or I'll have 0 equals 4t plus 1, subtract 1, subtract 1. Negative 1 equals 4t, divide by 4, divide by 4. Negative 1/4 t. So like I said before, time being negative is going to be a bad answer. Don't use this one. Say, bad answer. Doesn't work. Say something about negative values of time and distance. So, I would write my nice sentence. How long is it in the air? It is in the air. It is in the air for 1.5 seconds. Or you can say 3 halves. I know what it means. I said 1.5 seconds so that you knew these two things were both 1.5. Alright, so those are 3 word problems. And I'm pretty sure that we just have one more and we're done. So let's do this. This one's going to be a nice easy problem, because I could read this whole problem, but I know that it asks me when the gymnast will reach the floor. That tells me that 0, I don't like red, orange, green, alright, 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 8t plus 8. I'm going to divide all this by 8. Oh yeah, and you're going to get 0 equals negative 2t squared plus t plus 1. Go back, go. Ooh, this is fun. This is actually, if you guess and check this, somebody should actually do this problem, because I might be wrong. But I'm pretty sure they're both minus 1. Because I've done this problem a few times before. So this is 0 equals negative 2t minus 1. And this is 0 equals t minus 1. So add 1, 1 equals t. That's probably a good answer. Plus 1, 1 equals negative 2t. Divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. T equals negative 1/2. Alright, well, I would say the best answer then is going to be the gymnast. I don't know how to spell gymnast. That's an A-S-T. Will hit the floor after 1 second. And that seems like a reasonable answer. When you do these word problems, make sure you don't get the bird ate 3,000 pounds of bird feed. Alright, that doesn't make sense. If the gymnast is in the air for like 30 seconds, you better call Guinness Book of World Record and make sure that's not a world record. Those are not problems we're trying to do. We're trying to trick you into doing some real life problems, generating some interest in these problems, and getting better at math. Alright, so that's the end of it. That's a long one. There's 4 examples of word problems. I'm glad to help you if you need some more examples, but make sure you come and talk to me. Let's have a good end of the year.